Well, welcome everybody to Leeds Theosophical Society and the latest of our Zoom talks, which we've been doing for, about 4.5 years now. And recently we've pioneered a new format where rather than just having people doing talks, as interesting as they are, we do these conversations with people so we can explore people's esoteric background, their ideas, and any organizations that they belong to. And we're delighted this afternoon to welcome Bipin Patel from the Aetherius Society. I did a talk for them myself some months back, and they're a very interesting organization set up in 1955, I believe, by George King, who claimed to be in touch with various extraterrestrial intelligences. And this is something which Theosophy is also very interested in. So welcome, Bipin, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Can I begin by asking you just to outline a little bit about the Society and what it does and your involvement with it?
Okay, right, yeah. So the Aetherius Society was founded by Dr. George King. So Dr. George King, from a young age, was interested in spirituality, and he effectively was interested in various aspects of spirituality. But what happened was that around that time, he effectively the Second World War broke out. So he didn't actually take part in the war itself. He was an objector, but he was very active in the fire service. And he saw some of the horrors of war, what war brought about. And after the war, what he decided to do was he decided to dedicate himself to yoga. So for the next 10 years, he practiced yoga for 8 to 10 hours per night while in full-time employment during the day for 10 years. So he was a very intense purpose. And once he decided to do something, he really put his heart and soul into it. So by 1954, he had become a master of yoga. So, he was a master of yoga, and he received, in 1954, a communication which just said, prepare yourself. You have to become the voice of interplanetary parliament. Now, Dr. George King himself hadn't actually heard about this interplanetary parliament. He didn't know anything about it. And his interest in extraterrestrial intelligences wasn't that marked at that time. So for a little while, he was quite perplexed as to exactly what that meant. But he received a visit from a prominent master who was alive in India at that time, who explained to him essentially what we refer to as the command meant. And he was initiated into certain practices. And through that initiation, which he, again, diligently did what he was requested to do, he was able to gain telepathic rapport with intelligences from other planets, primarily within the solar system. So I would say he has had contacts with other intelligences as well, but the intelligences that he's had contacts with is from the solar system primarily. So Mars, Venus, Saturn, for example. Now, these messages really were sent because the whole of humanity is going through a big change. And I think the biggest change that came about around the Second World War was the rediscovery of atomic power. And that was one of the big dangers that threatened to annihilate humanity. So it was a combination of that kind of crisis, and the other kind of primary thing that we needed to do was to bring about a rise in the spiritual awareness of humanity, that the interplanetary intelligences decided to use Dr. George King as a channel for very important messages to come through in a deep samadhic yogic trance state. So the Aetherius
Can I
Society,
ask you, Bipin, what the nature of these messages was, and did it offer practical solutions to
absolutely, yeah. So the
these
whole thing
problems?
about the Aetherius Society is it's completely based on practicality. So Dr. George King was, again, he was an intensely practical person. And the Aetherius Society is based around practicality. So for instance, at the basic level, it reintroduced the spiritual teachings, but in a modern language. So for instance, we were given the 9 freedoms by a Martian intelligence, which outlines the 9 major steps we need to make in our evolutionary progress. So 6 of the steps are on this earth. So for instance, the 6th freedom is ascension, which is when you break away from the cycle of birth and rebirth upon this planet. So in essence, the teachings were a reintroduction of what we already have, but in for the modern times. Um, and so the other 3 steps actually tell us, so the 7th, 8th, and 9th freedoms actually in very great detail tell us exactly what happens when you break away from the cycle of birth and rebirth. So for instance, the Buddhists have the concept of nirvana, which is when, like for instance, Buddha broke away from the cycle of rebirth. It's referred to as ascension in the Bible. And it's breaking away from the cycle of rebirth. And then what happens when you go onwards? So the 7th, 8th, and 9th freedoms outline that. But even the first 6 freedoms are very important to humanity. So that was one of the key teachings that was given through Dr. George King. The other transmissions that we're given is the 12 blessings. So the 12 blessings were actually given by the Master Jesus. So the Master Jesus, we believe, came from the planet Venus. So he's a Venusian master. And so he introduced the 12 blessings, which is a set of prayers. But those prayers are now again geared towards this age, when we've kind of gone into the cosmos and we've said, okay, right, we now know what galaxies are to a certain extent. So, for instance, the 10th blessing is blessed is a great being known as the galaxy. So, in essence, the Master Jesus starts with, so for the 12 blessings start with, blessed are they who work for peace, blessed are the wise ones, blessed are they who love. But it then goes to a cosmic level. So, for instance, the 7th blessing is, blessed is the Mother Earth. So, the Earth is a living intelligence, and this is known to quite a lot of different cultures,
Yeah.
including in Hindu religion.
Yeah. Can I ask you, you talk about these masters, these very wise beings, because in Theosophy we also talk a lot about these, and I'm wondering whether there is a particular correspondence with the masters that Dr. King and the Aetherius Society have identified, and those that are identified by Theosophy, principally, well, the Master Jesus, Kuthumi, Moria, and others. Is there any correspondence there as far as you know?
Absolutely. So, for instance, we believe masters like Kutumi are masters of what we refer to as the Great White Brotherhood. So, the Great White Brotherhood, with our understanding of it, is that they are masters who have broken away from the cycle of birth and rebirth upon this earth. But so they then had the option to leave this earth to go on with their planetary evolution on other planets. But what they did was, rather than do that, they decided that to stay back because humanity needed their expertise, their love, their teaching. So that is the Great White Brotherhood. So the Great White Brotherhood is led by a master we refer to as the Lord Babaji. So he is the political and spiritual head of the Great White Brotherhood. And then there are obviously other masters. For instance, we believe that Lord Maitreya is another prominent master of the Great White Brotherhood. So with the Great White Brotherhood have obviously several retreats all over the world. So for instance, Kilimanjaro is one of the retreats. Castle Peak is a retreat. I think Mount Shasta, these are some of the newer retreats. So for instance, Castle Peak is a new retreat, but Mount Shasta has been a retreat of the Great White Brotherhood for possibly thousands of years. So yeah, there is a very strong correspondence between the masters that are referred to in the Theosophical Society and what we know in the Aetherius Society.
Are there people in your society, are you personally in contact with these intelligences, these extraterrestrial intelligences now, or is this ceased for the time being?
No, it has. So Dr. George King, he actually explained this, that to a certain extent, in order to be able to communicate with these intelligences, you need to be at a very evolved stage. So, as like I told you, Dr. George King practiced 8 to 10 hours of yoga intensely. This is practice, not theory, not reading books. This is actually practicing yoga for that time, 8 to 10 hours for 10 years while in full-time employment. Now, I do not know of anyone in the West, who's done that. There's masters in the East, but quite a lot of the masters in the East may have just retreated away from humanity, gone away to the Himalayas or somewhere, and practiced that kind of yoga. But Dr. George King did it in London while he was based in London. So the bottom line is that in order to be able to communicate with these intelligences, you need to be pretty advanced yourself. And there's very few people who have that intensity to be able to communicate. So, yes, the bottom line is that once Dr. George King passed away, then there haven't been any official communications from interplanetary intelligences through the Aetherius Society.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I know you're interested in is advanced civilizations in other parts of the solar system.
Sure.
Now, this is something which a great many people will find quite difficult to understand or to believe. Can you outline briefly what you understand by these and what the nature of these civilizations might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in essence, what we are saying is, so for instance, we've gone to Mars and we've looked at Mars with the rover and said, look, there doesn't seem to be much evidence of life, but that is life as we know it. So, in essence, actually, even science is now moving on. So, really, although we regard our bodies as solid, we are composed of electrons, neutrons, and that was the kind of original concept. But then once we went into the quantum mechanical world, things became really strange because you said, well, an electron can be a particle, but can also act as a wave. So in essence, the bottom line is that what we regard as physical matter isn't physical. It's a certain frequency of vibration. So for instance, even on this earth, if you actually look at the molecular vibration, it's within a certain frequency band, a certain vibrational band. And so it occupies a certain frequency. So different levels of existence can coexist in the same space. So for instance, so at the moment, we are quite happy to say you can have lots and lots of television channels at different frequencies, and you tune your receiver, and you can pick up these different channels. So the concept of frequency and tuning into different channels is now understood. Now we just need to extend this to our what we call physical existence. So on this earth, we are physical only in the sense that we are vibrating within a certain spectrum. So when you pass on, you actually move on to another existence, but that existence, most of the people kind of make it vague, it's etheric. But it isn't actually etheric, it's physical, but at a different frequency of vibration, so that the two are mutually don't interact with each other. So there are several levels of existence on this earth itself. And so what we're saying is that on Mars and Venus, there are similarly several different frequencies of vibration, and the frequencies at which they exist are not detectable to us with our present technology.
Well, this chimes in also very much with what the Theosophical Society teaches. I mean, that teaches that we have a number of subtle bodies, both temporary and permanent. Our temporary bodies would be an etheric body, an energizing body, an astral body, and a lower mental body. That's the personality which lasts for a life. And then we have a soul or an enduring individuality, which consists of the higher mind, what we call the wisdom intuition principle, and then our connection to the universal spirit of the cosmos. So this is very much part of what we believe. It's very similar in lots of ways, and it is all about finer and finer states. One of the problems, of course, that we do have, as you alluded to, is that science still, despite quantum mechanics, still largely looks on the world as a purely material phenomenon without any kind of subtle or non-physical aspects to it. And this clearly is a problem, isn't it?
It is, but I think again, quantum mechanics has got to that stage where it's recognized that there isn't anything physical in terms of At one time, it was nice the electron was a nice round particle, and that was it. But now, I think if you ask even the quantum physicists what is an electron, they no longer kind of say, oh, it's this nice little particle. It's more like a wave function, and a wave function is energy. And once you start talking about energy, then one of the primary attributes is frequency. And I think if you can accept that, then you kind of find that you can have this coexistence. And I think that's the next leap that science needs to make. So they've kind of got to this quantum mechanical concept where they say, oh, right, there's quite a number of possibilities. If I move left, then there is one kind of universe you create. If I move right, you create another universe. But that's kind of too simplistic, because you can imagine with the number of people, the possibilities, there's so many possibilities that you'd have, a huge number of universes almost. And I think to simplify it, what it does really mean is that there are these different frequencies of existence. And what might appear very physical to us isn't. And this is what in the Hindu philosophy is referred to as the great illusion, the Maya. So one of the things about enlightenment is actually to be able to see beyond this illusion that things that are solid, there is nothing that is solid. It's all frequency vibrations. And that's what it boils down to. So for example, even on this earth, on this physical level, we are seated in a room, but on another frequency of vibration, on another level, there could be a mountain. On another level, there could be actually a sea. So if you were actually on that level and you couldn't swim, you would actually drown. But because you're on this level, you can't sense it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it. But to the person on that level, it would be very physical, very real. And I think that's the transition that science needs to make. That with these different frequencies, and I think they're now kind of accepting that, yes, you can have these different frequencies of existence, and there's no such thing as actually physical stuff. It's all vibration. If you are within the same vibrational framework, it will feel solid. If you're not, then it won't. And that is why, for instance, there have been quite a lot of sightings of UFOs on Earth. And I think now, even the American government is admitting that they have been covering up on UFOs. Now, one of the attributes of UFOs is that they can literally just blink out of existence. And when they blink out of existence, in essence, what they have the ability to vibrate from one plane to another. And so it's still a physical. So the UFO, if you actually would be a physical spacecraft, you could touch it, you could feel it, because it's on the same vibrational plane as we are. But it could, if it just kind of vibrated away from this, it just would disappear. And you'd say, right, it no longer exists. And I
So
think
it's transdimensional, you're saying?
It's not transdimensional. And this is what Dr. George King was very specific. He says that we are living within a 7-dimensional framework. So for instance, the three, there's the length, breadth, and height. So that's the 3 dimensions. The 4th dimension is time. So I think those are accepted by science. Now, the 5th dimension is actually motion. And if you think about it, everything is movement. Manifestation is movement. So even when you go to the pranas, there are kind of the 5 major pranas and the 5 minor pranas. And the thing that characterizes these pranas is movement. So effectively, the 5th dimension is motion. Now, in order to give direction to motion, the 6th dimension is mind, and the 7th dimension is will. So what Dr. George King said is that literally all of existence is within this dimensional framework. So it's not trans-dimensional in that sense. What it is, it's different frequencies of existence within this 7-dimensional framework.
Okay. If we could just go back a little bit, I was very interested about what you were saying about these civilizations, non-physical or different vibrating
Different
civilizations.
vibrations. They are physical, but different vibrations. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about the specifics of these civilizations and how they operate and what they would appear to us like? And are they far more advanced than us in terms of their consciousness, for example?
Absolutely. So they are not only spiritually, but technologically millions of years advanced than we are. So, I mean, say, even if you look at on this earth, even over the last 100 years, there's been a huge, huge kind of change. So you can imagine a race on another planet. How much advancement, especially if they had all the scientific background like we have, but in addition to that, spiritual background. And I think that's the essence, that what has happened is that science has become really very cold and mathematical. It's the spirituality that's lacking in the science. It's the fusion of science and spirituality that is the hallmarks, actually, of civilizations on other planets. So we can only get a little bit of a glimpse, because you can imagine that if even in 1,000,000 years, how much could a civilization, how much will we progress if we continue without destroying ourselves in 1,000,000 years? So they are absolutely millions of years more advanced than us. So it's very difficult for us to get a complete understanding of what they do. But just to give you an example, so for instance, Mars is regarded as one of the it's like the technology center. So for instance, they make spacecraft. So there are spacecraft that go throughout this galaxy, and they are the center for example, for manufacturing spacecraft. So it's a very physical thing. That spacecraft is a physical thing, but that spacecraft will have a capability to be able to vibrate at these different levels. And in fact, you say, okay, why do they need this spacecraft? In fact, at the moment, we have in orbit of this Earth a spacecraft which we refer to as satellite number 3. And on satellite number 3, there are masters who are actually serving humanity at the moment. So we are in what we refer to as a spiritual push. So effectively, any unselfish spiritual action that we perform is potentized by a factor of 3,000 times. So for example, if I spend half an hour in prayer for world peace and humanity, that prayer energy output would be enhanced by a factor of 3,000 times by these space intelligences. So yes, so one of the things that these space intelligences do is to help civilizations throughout the galaxy. So as far as we're concerned, the galaxy is full of life. So, we've got, I don't know, somewhere in the region of about between 100 billion and 400 billion, according to the latest estimate, solar systems within this galaxy. So there's a vast number of civilizations all over, and many of these civilizations, just like we, need help. So one of their primary goals would be helping other less evolved intelligences. So that would be one of their functions. But they themselves are also evolving, and I can't actually go into all the details. But like I said, this 9 Freedoms, the book that I have here, the 9 Freedoms, that actually highlights in the 7th eighth and ninth freedoms, the steps that we need to take. So, for example, the planets Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune are the next in the evolutionary scale. But then the planets Venus and Uranus are even more evolved than the other planets. And then the Saturn is the most advanced planet within this solar system. So even within the solar system, you have this difference in terms of the evolutionary status, depending on which planet you are on.
So are these beings, these entities from other planets and their spaceships, are they visiting the Earth? Are ones from outside our solar system visiting this Earth? Is this what is generally referred to as the UFO phenomenon, or the UAP, as it's now called, unidentified
Yes,
aerial
let's
phenomenon?
change the name, yes.
Yes, they've changed the name. So are these things that the American government has gone to such great lengths to deny for 70 years and is now beginning to admit? Is this what we're seeing? Beings from...
Absolutely, yes. So Dr. George King, he said in the, after he had the context, he said in the 50s that the UFOs are friendly, they're helping humanity, and that there is a massive cover-up. He did this in the 50s, and now, 70 years on, it's kind of becoming very clear that that was the case. So he said that, yes, there was a cover-up, and even now, it is with only great reticence that they are actually admitting the UFO phenomena. So in essence, quite a lot of the spacecraft that come here are actually coming here to help us. And in fact, one of the major ways in which they're actually helping us is that they're trying to... One of the most dangerous steps, as we took, was the discovery of atomic nuclear energy. That was a really very dangerous step, because we're not really equipped to deal with this, because not only is radioactivity affecting us on this level, but because of its frequency, it affects other levels as well. So it's extremely dangerous. And they said, look, we do not know really how to handle radioactivity. And one of the things that they've helped us with is that they've absorbed quite a lot of the radioactivity that was released as the senseless experimentation. So there was bomb after bomb being exploded, and there was a huge amount of radioactivity that was sent out into the atmosphere. And one of the things they thankfully did for us was to actually control that radioactivity, because it would have annihilated us, really. So that is one of the primary reasons for coming to Earth. But yes, in answer to your question, there are spacecraft that come from the solar system, but they also come from other parts of the galaxy as well. Yes.
It's very interesting what you say, Bipin, about nuclear energy, because in the modern era, although people have seen crafts from other worlds, and I prefer not to use the word alien because that's not a good word. I prefer to use...
I agree with you.
I prefer to use space brothers, a more friendly term and everything. But isn't it interesting that in the modern era, and I'm talking about 1947 here, Kenneth Arnold seeing flying discs, and then a few days later, the Roswell crash. Now, that was near the only place in the world at that time which stored nuclear weapons. And that's very significant. And also, there have been many sightings around nuclear test sites, around nuclear missile launches, and even interventions by unknown sources to interfere with these weapons, to turn them on and offline. There are countless instances of this happening. So is it this discovery of nuclear technology, or rediscovery of nuclear technology, is that what has stirred interest amongst these visitors from other planets? Or was this going on before? Or did it just intensify after nuclear power was rediscovered?
Yeah, so it definitely intensified after the discovery of nuclear power. But the space intelligences have always had an interest in us ever since we came to this Earth. So, for instance, we believe that the founders of the major religions like Sri Krishna, or the Lord Buddha, the Master Jesus, were interplanetary intelligences that came to help this earth. So you might ask, okay, why didn't they just land openly and help us? Now, the answer to that question is that all of the help that they give us has to be within karmic confines. So we are on this earth to learn certain lessons. And there are very strict rules in terms of how much help they can give us. So it's just like, imagine that there was someone going to school and you said, look, the parents will say, I'll do all your homework for you. That's not going to be of any use because it's the pupil that needs to learn that lesson. So that is where we are, that the law of karma is here as a teacher to guide us. And, we're doing kind of things. And what we are experiencing on this earth is a result of our past karma, all the negative karma. And that is why we are in the mess that we are on this earth. And what the space intelligence can do, they can help us within the karmic confines, but nevertheless, they can't do it all for us, because otherwise, all that will happen is that, yeah, they could land openly and sort our problems out in a matter of a few years. No difficulty whatsoever. But then they would have to leave us again, and I think we would just start again. We would not have learned the lessons. And that is why the help that they give is within the karmic confines. And that is what they find extremely frustrating, because they do want to help us more, but we've got to open our hearts and minds before they can do that.
And I suppose this law of karma is such an ineluctable law. It's so inevitable, we cannot avoid it at all. And if these beings were to intervene, they would be infringing human free will, because that's why we're here on this earth, to learn the consequences of using our free will, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. You summed it up beautifully. So yeah, it's free will is the big problem. And in fact, the big change that we need to do is to go from free will to freedom. And it might seem that the two are the same, but they are poles apart. So free will is when you do whatever you please and you don't care about the consequences. Freedom is when you act and act wisely within the confines. You understand the law of karma and you act within the confines of that law of karma. So that's actually the key lesson that we need to learn on this earth, that movement from free will to freedom.
And I suppose as soon as you start talking about the law of karma, you inevitably have to bring in the idea of rebirth or reincarnation, because karma operating in a single life would be meaningless. It's part of a continuum of lives, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So I mean, say that is it, and that's where karma and reincarnation come together. That one life, you simply can't gain the experience that you need in one life, or even 10 lives, or even 100 lives. So we've really lived phenomenal number of lives. Now, if you go to the ancient Hindu texts, they do give a little bit of an indication of the lives, and those numbers are phenomenal. It's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of lives to get that full evolutionary experience. So it is a lot of lives that we need to lead through, and it just kind of shows how much we got to learn. And in some ways, it's fantastic. We've got to. Science has got to think. Oh, we're nearly sorted out most of our understanding. Just a few more things, and hooray, we are there. We aren't. We are miles, millions and millions and millions of lives away from total experience.
Yes, well, science always likes to believe it knows all the answers until it discovers some more questions, doesn't it? Is it your belief, Bipin, that human beings, part of this terrestrial body that we live on, do we reincarnate on other worlds?
No, you don't. So our belief is that you go within a specific cycle. So in essence, what would happen is that you learn the lessons on this earth first, and then you effectively go through ascension or nirvana, which is the sixth freedom, which is when you break away from this cycle of rebirth, and then you can begin to get higher experiences on other planets, or you may be asked to stay back on this earth to help humanity, and that's when you join the Great White Brotherhood. So, for instance, like masters like Kutumi, they have stayed back to help mankind. So they're part of the Great White Brotherhood. And as I say, we believe that the head of the Great White Brotherhood is the Lord Babaji, who is a very, very advanced intelligence who has been here for millions of years looking after humanity. So that's our belief, that you would not. There may be a certain instance, for example, when someone became a very advanced adept on this earth, who may actually be taken by extraterrestrial intelligences to get certain initiations or certain knowledge to another planet for a brief period, but then they normally would come back to Earth. So the general way of kind of breaking away from, not breaking away, but yeah, I guess it is to a certain extent, from the cycle of rebirth, is gaining all the experiences that you need to gain ascension or nirvana, as it's referred to by the Buddhists.
And would Babaji, would he correspond to the Lord of the World, Sanat Kumara, or a figure like that, or is he someone separate to that?
So the Lord Babaji is a separate intelligence. The Sanat Kumara was actually a very advanced intelligence from the planet Venus. And interestingly enough, again, this was through Dr. George King. In the 1950s, there was a big change that happened, in the sense that the Sanat Kumara actually came to this earth 18 million years ago, and he's been on Earth for 18 million years ago, again, helping humanity. And what happened was that there was a transition that happened, and the Lord Buddha is now effectively or he's taken the position of the Sanat Kumara. So the Sanat Kumara has now left this earth, but it's the Lord Buddha who occupies that position now. The Lord Babaji is actually a Saturnian intelligence. So again, the Lord Babaji, again, for these interplanetary intelligences to help us, they have to take on tremendous limitation. So the Lord Babaji, it's a small fraction of his consciousness. So just like when the Master Jesus came to this earth, it was a small part of his consciousness that was born on this earth. It's a small part of the consciousness of a Saturnian intelligence, which is the Lord Babaji on this earth. And just to give you an example, so for example, the Lord Babaji is helping us on this earth, but another aspect of that Saturnian intelligence at the same time could be on another planet for 1 million years, helping another race. So that is the evolution of the Saturnian master. But yes, so the Lord Babaji is an aspect of a Saturnian master, and he is the most advanced master of the Great White Brotherhood, and that is why he is the political and spiritual head of the Great White Brotherhood.
Okay, if we might move out of the solar system and look at a number of heavenly bodies which are featured in a great many cultures in different eras and different civilizations. And these are the Pleiades, Sirius, and Orion. Do you have any understanding of the connection between humanity and these stars?
So in essence, all of life is interconnected. And what happens is that, so for instance, the sun emits certain energies. Now, we can only dimly realize what's happening. Now, those energies go and impact not only life streams within this solar system, but within this galaxy to a certain extent. So there is this continuous interchange of energy, even at a galactic level. So effectively, we are all interconnected. And so, for instance, so the solar system is moving around the galaxy, and I think its one cycle is about 250 million years. So it takes 250 million years for one galactic year, I suppose you could say. It's 250 million years, right? So there is this intense interchange of energies at that kind of level at the solar, the planetary level. So, for instance, energies are radiated from the planet Saturn that affect not only this solar system, but this galaxy. So there is a huge interconnection, and that in itself would be, I think, a study for, I don't know, 100,000 lives possibly to understand those interactions. Yes, so there is a huge interaction that goes on, and what you've related to are some of those kind of interactions between certain kind of clusters of stars and our solar system.
Now, some people talk about next year being a very crucial year. There are certain people in esoteric circles who talk about the centennial conclave of the masters in Shambhala. This is something that happens in the 25th year of every century, we're told, in order to set the tone, set the agenda for the coming century and everything. Do you have any understanding of this? And do you believe in this idea that this happens, this once in 100 years meeting?
So I can't comment on the once in 100-year meeting. I think obviously Shambhala is a very important center in the sense that it manipulates energies that are essential not only to this level of existence, but all the other levels of existence connected with this earth. So, for instance, there are 7 levels of existence on this earth, and there are what we refer to as the astral realms, another 4. So there are actually 11 planes of existence connected to this earth. And Shambhala has responsibility for quite a lot of the energy manipulations that goes on. So there is quite a significant role played by Shambhala in helping humanity. So I'm sure on Shambhala there are very important high-level meetings happening on a frequency that I won't be able to comment on because I do not know about them. But in essence, I think what we believe in the Aetherius Society is that the next major happening is going to be the coming of another interplanetary master to this earth, whom we refer to as the next master. Now, if things were correct, if things were right on this earth, the correct astrological time for that master to have come to earth would have been 1962, which is when we had a planetary configuration in the solar system. So that would, from an astrological perspective, would have been the right time for that next master to have come to earth. But unfortunately,
there's a Cuban Missile Crisis.
There was a Cuban Missile Crisis, among other things. And by the way, the Cuban Missile Crisis was actually stopped as a result of interplanetary intervention. So there was actually quite a lot of manipulations, and some of the manipulations were actually performed through Dr. George King. Because he was an advanced master of yoga, he could be used to manipulate energy. So there was quite a significant manipulation carried out to avert that. So yeah, so that would have been the right time for the next master to have come to Earth. But so he hasn't come, and this is the $1 million question: when is he coming? And the answer to the question is he will come to this earth at the most strategic time so that the earth could get the most benefit. And so we can't set it that it's going to be next year or the year after, because in some ways, the more time we are given, and if we use it well, then we'll be better prepared for his coming. Because when he comes to this earth, it will be like a sorting. It'll be a time for everyone to make a decision. Do you want to follow the spiritual path, or do you want to go another path? If you want to follow the spiritual path, then we'll be moving into what we refer to as the New Age. So there is a reference in Aetherius Society teaching to a 1,000-year period. So I think we've got roughly about a 1,000-year period before the New Age effectively manifests in its full splendor. But there is quite a lot of work to do before we kind of get there. And the next master will come here to prepare us for the New Age. Now, you might ask, okay, so what is this big significance? Now, the big significance is that on the 8th of July, 1964, the primary initiation of the Mother Earth took place. So the Mother Earth is a planetary intelligence, and just like we go through several initiations, the Mother Earth also goes through initiations. So she received her primary initiation in 1964. Now, in 1964, had she released all the energies that she received as a primary initiation, this planet would be completely transformed, but most of humanity would not be able to exist in the vibration that this planet would be lifted up to. So in some ways, the Mother Earth is actually holding herself back to allow humanity to evolve. And so I think we are being given this period of time. And at the moment, it seems like 1,000 years is what humanity needs to be able to prepare itself for a time when the great change could come to this earth. But as I say, what we believe in the Aetherius Society is that the next major event that will take place is a coming to this earth of another interplanetary master. Now, the difference between when the next interplanetary master comes is that Sri Krishna had to be born on this earth, the Lord Buddha had to be born on this earth, the Master Jesus had to be born on this earth. So they all had to take on a karmic limitation in order to help us. The difference with the next master is that he will land openly in a spacecraft. So that will be the difference. And as a result of that, he will have more power and more karmic authority to bring about the changes that are needed on this earth to prepare us for the new age on this earth.
So it's really a question now of more and more people choosing their spiritual side above the purely material side. And this is something which I think is happening gradually. But isn't it going to lead to a situation eventually where humanity splits into people who are following a spiritual path and those who have chosen not to? And if that takes place, what are the consequences of that?
So I think that's it. I think it's a time for decision for everyone. So in essence, with the primary initiation of the Mother Earth, when she releases this energy, the whole vibration on this earth will go up significantly. And only those who are sufficiently spiritually advanced will be able to exist in that environment. So those that are unable to then will be actually will have to be reborn on another younger planet within this solar system.
Okay, well, this has been a truly fascinating chat. Can we wind up by getting you to talk a little bit about the current work of the Aetherius Society, both here in the UK and in other parts of the world as well?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so as I said, Dr. George King was a very practical master, and what he did was leave behind very practical tools. So at a kind of at a simple level, we have services where we come together for world peace, prayer for world peace, enlightenment. And these are also classes when we play various extracts from the Cosmic Masters and also addresses by Dr. George King. So they are like something that people would be familiar with in terms of an organization holding services, sending out energy for healing, upliftment. But then we move on to this other part of the Aetherius Society, which is that cosmic connection with the masters. So even as we are speaking at the moment, there is within this premises a mission taking place, which we refer to as Operation Prayer Power. So in Operation Prayer Power, we have a prayer team and a mantra team. But effectively, what they do is they invoke this energy, and that energy is then stored in a physical battery, which we refer to as a spiritual energy battery. So this battery was actually invented by Dr. George King through his yogic experience. And we also have equipment to discharge the energy. So we charge this energy over several weeks. and then say there is a catastrophe somewhere, there's a hurricane that's happened, or there's starvation going on, or there's a war brewing, and then there's a possibility of peace talks. This energy can then be directed to these areas in cooperation with the space intelligences. So again, they're helping us within the law of karma. So that's Operation Prayer Power. So now that's that cosmic connection. Another mission that goes on is that, again, on this premises, we have what we refer to as a spiritual energy radiator. And I mentioned this satellite that we have, satellite number 3. And for 3 hours every day, the spiritual energy radiator is activated. And again, this was invented by Dr. George King. So energy is beamed from satellite number 3. It goes through the spiritual energy radiator, and then it's radiated out for humanity, again, for world peace, upliftment, healing. So that's the other second cosmic connect, which we refer to as Operation Space Power. And, this is, again, it's that karmic, so the masters could help us directly, but they need this karmic anchor of having a spiritual energy radiator through which they can radiate this energy out to humanity. So that's Operation Space Power. Another mission that is performed is Operation Sunbeam, and this is sending a token energy to the Mother Earth. So again, in this mission, what happens is that we have advanced interplanetary masters that actually charge or used to, at one point, they actually collect energy from certain holy mountains, which were charged by Dr. George King in a mission that we refer to as Operation Starlight. So the energy is collected by these interplanetary masters, and then it's radiated through equipment, again invented by Dr. George King, and sent to a psychic center of the Mother Earth. So this is like a token thank you to the Mother Earth from humanity for all that she has done for us. So that's what we refer to as Operation Sunbeam. So those are 3 missions, and there are actually other missions going on. So that gives a little bit of a flavor. So the Aetherius Society at one level appears to be like at a church, but it's got this cosmic connection, and it's got several missions. And as I say, I only mentioned 3, but there is other missions that are being performed by the Aetherius Society. So the Aetherius Society is very, very active on a cosmic level, and it's at that cosmic level in cooperation with the cosmic masters that there's this tremendous manipulation that's going on behind the scenes that very few people are aware of.
Okay, my final question, Bipin, is does the Aetherius Society or its members have contact with other organizations? I'm thinking in terms of the groups that investigate UFOs and similar things as well. Is there much contact with such people?
So I think we have some contact, but I think, like Dr. George King said, is that, so the UFO phenomena is interesting in the sense that, you can learn a little bit about spacecraft, but the far more important thing is the message from these intelligences in this spacecraft. And those messages have come through Dr. George King. So, that's far more important. So like I said, the 9 freedoms, this book here gives the 9 major steps in our evolutionary path through this solar system, not only on this Earth, but through this through other planets on this solar system. So there is a wealth of knowledge there, which to me is far more interesting. I have an interest because I'm an engineer, so I do have a very keen interest in the spacecraft and how they operate, and I certainly would be interested in that. But I know that the way to do that is to study the 9 freedoms first, because in essence, the spacecraft, being told, are a replica of our psychic centers. So if we can understand our psychic centers, we'll understand the propulsion system of a spacecraft. And the way to understand our psychic centers is to go within, and on our journey of self-discovery, know yourself, and you will know the universe almost to a certain extent. So that is, that is the essence, that if you go within, all knowledge is within you. And that's the way to kind of discover what's outside as well.
Well, I think on that profound note, we'll finish there. Okay, well, thank you very much, Bipin, for a very absorbing and wide-ranging talk, and I certainly hope that you'll agree to talk to us again at some point in the future.